afternoon, Year 5, and welcome to Science. So, today we are going to think about the 7 processes of life and be able to answer the question, how do we know if something is alive? So before we get onto that, pause the screen here and have a go at these 4 questions in your Just Checking. Okay, so now we'll go through the answers. So question number 1 was, what type of habitat is a camel suited to? You should have said desert. Desert habitat, we often find camels. They're able to go a long time without much water. The largest planet in our solar system, you should have written Jupiter. What Apollo mission was the first to land on the moon would be Apollo 11. And what instrument do I use to measure temperature? You should have said a thermometer. Okay, so just as a bit of a reminder, think about who our powerful person is for this topic. Can you remember his name? Can you also remember why he is our powerful person for our topic this term? So hopefully you remembered Charles Linnaeus. He was a botanist, a zoologist, and a physician. And we are looking at him specifically because he was part of the describing and classifying organisms, plants, animals, microorganisms, which is what we have been looking at. So we're thinking today about what makes something alive. So here's a little bit of a picture for you to think about. The question is a balloon alive? These 4 children have got their thoughts about this question. Pause the screen here, read each one, and see who you agree with. Okay, so we've got the girl in the top corner here saying it is alive because it needs air and it grows. The boy in the middle here, the balloon moves and therefore it's alive. This boy here, it doesn't need food, so it's not alive. What do you think? What did you say? Because all of these things are true, that it does move, it does need air, but it doesn't need all of the things that we need to be alive. Now, I've got a little acronym for you here. There are 7 processes of life, and we will use this acronym of Mrs. Gren. Mrs. Gren, because that stands for movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, and nutrition. And these are the 7 processes that something needs to be able to do to be alive. So let's go into a little bit more detail. The first one in Mrs. Gren was movement. So all living things have to move. It could be animals moving from place to place, or it could be a plant's ability to move and turn towards the light. So it doesn't have to be a full movement as only walking or running. Plants are able to move slightly to be able to turn their leaves towards the light. So movement is our first process. The second was respiration. So all living things need to breathe. Plants and animals use oxygen in the air and turn this into energy. So all living things are able to respirate, to breathe. The next was sensitivity. So this means all living things are sensitive to changes around them in their environment. So whether that be getting cold and our bodies reacting to that, whether that be the ability to smell or to talk or to move, all come under senses as well. We're to the G of Mrs. Gren. All living things grow, whether that be from baby into adult or whether that be from a seed growing into a plant. So again, all of these things refer to not only animals, but all living things. And we know that plants are alive also. Reproduction. All living things are able to reproduce. So whether that be an animal having a baby, a human having a baby, or plants growing from seeds, and that pollination, that reproduction of plants. Excretion. So all living things excrete waste product, whether that be going to the toilet as a human or an animal, but plants also excrete gas and water that they do not need. So all living things excrete. And then finally, all living things need nutrition. All living things get their energy from food, and that's the same for plants as well. We know that there is nutrition in the soil that plants are in, and also from the sun. They get their energy from the sun. So all living things need nutrition. So these are the 7 processes. Pause the screen here, see what you can do to help remember the Mrs. Gren acronym. You might want to do a movement to each one to really get that in your mind. So let's see if we can test this. Let's see, is a cloud alive, is mold alive, or is the sun alive? Let's go through and think, do they meet all 7 of the life processes? So a cloud moves. Yes, it moves across the sky. Does a cloud reproduce though? No. Is it sensitive to stimulus? No. Does it take on nutrients? No. Does it excrete waste? I wouldn't really say that a cloud raining is excreting waste, but I can imagine how that could be like that. And it's not respiring. It could be seen to grow, but a cloud isn't actually growing. So as you can see, a cloud is not alive. Let's look at mold now, mold that might grow on bread if you left it too long, for example. So it can move because it can expand and therefore move across things. It can reproduce. Mold reproduces and spreads across the piece of bread, and it does respond to hot and cold. That's why we put things in the fridge, because it stops the mold from growing. It does take on nutrients. It gets that from the food it's growing on. It does excrete waste. That's the gases that come off something that's moldy, is the smell. It does actually respire because it takes in the oxygen to grow. So it does do that. And as I said, it does grow and spread. So it is alive. I'll let you do the same for the sun. So pause your screen and have a think about the sun. So straight away, the sun does not move. So therefore the sun is not alive. It's not a living organism. So these Mrs. Gren statements will help us to determine whether something is alive. So what you're going to be doing, and I will put an assignment on Teams with a Word document, is you are going to be writing a poem using Mrs. Gren. So first of all, I would write down the acronym so that you've got it in your mind. Then you are going to write it down vertically again, but using the letters to make a poem. So movement, maneuver through the grass. Respiration, rising your chest goes up and down. So you are turning this into an acrostic poem, and each of the letters needs to describe what that sense is. So for S, which is sensitivity, we could say sensing the world around us. For G, for growth, we could say growing up tall and strong. So it will create a poem that helps us to remember Mrs. Gren. So if you want to leave the screen paused on here, because it's got what Mrs. Gren stands for and the definition of what each of those processes means, and then open up your Teams assignment and you can create your poem there. Looking forward to reading those, Year 5. Well done.